Hey guys, it's Johnny. Lots of people want to improve their financial situation, they want to build wealth, but maybe struggle when it comes to the discipline aspect of things, when it comes to the patience aspect of things, or when it comes to doing that little bit extra to move you forward. And so if you're in the process of building wealth, but you want to speed up that journey a little bit, I'm going to talk about some of the different ways that you can do that in this video. So let's get right into it. So let's start by talking about the concept of building wealth. Now, becoming more wealthy, building your wealth, your portfolio, your net worth is about keeping as much as you can of the money that you bring in. And so the more you keep, the more you'll have, the opportunity to grow that wealth and increase your net worth. Now, how to do this in practice, we'll talk about it through the course of the video. But just before we start, if you are interested in learning how to calculate your net worth and how to track it, I've built a net worth tracker, which is available on Etsy that you can go and download from my store over there. And so what are the components that we're looking at here that we're taking into account? Well, essentially we start with your income. That's any money that you bring in, whether it's from a salary or another source. You then have your expenses, so your basic needs for living, for example, and any discretionary spend that you have as well. And then when you subtract your expenses from your income, that leaves you with your savings portion, or shovel, as it's been called, by Dave Ramsey, American finance personality, that you can use to, put aside to invest. You can put aside to save towards a project you have, like buying a car, a house, a holiday, for example. It's essentially this portion that we're going to focus on in this video and how to maximize it. So looking at the mathematical equation that we talked about just before, so income minus expenses. So there are two ways to maximize this shovel, this savings portion that you have. The first is to reduce your expenses, which we'll look at first in the video, and the second is to increase your income. So let's start by looking at how you can reduce your expenses. So if you don't already have a budget, the first thing to do would be to build a budget from scratch, looking category by category at your key expense lines and determining how much money you are spending a month on these items. Now, if you haven't done this before, aside the fixed items such as maybe rent, such as council tax, etc., then there's going to be a few items that might vary from month to month. For example, your electricity bill might vary depending on what time it is in the year. Your supermarket bill might vary on how long the month is. So, it might take a couple of months to determine exactly how much you are setting for yourself as a general standard on a monthly basis. If you do have a budget that you've been following for a while, but you're still looking for ways to cut back and increase your savings rate by reducing expenses, then maybe this is a good time to reset your budget and start brand new from scratch. And so my suggestion when looking through this budget would be to focus on the big items first. So for example, your transportation needs, your housing and living needs, because these are probably the biggest expenses that you have on a monthly basis. And by finding ways to reduce them, it will make the biggest difference over the long term. So for example, are you living in a place that's maybe bigger than you need and you can downsize to somewhere smaller? Or can you find the same type of accommodation but maybe a little bit further out from the city where the prices are a little bit cheaper? Do you have a really expensive or really high-end car? Could you make do with something that's maybe a little bit less in terms of a cost from a car perspective? Do you even need a car? Are you able to make do with public transport? For example, this is something that for me has saved me a lot of money, that I haven't got a car. I am able to drive because I don't really need one. I can hire one on an occasional basis, and I mainly take public transport to get around, or my e-scooter. It saved me hundreds of euros over the year, and that's all money that I've been able to save, invest, and put towards other things. So assessing the need for some of these bigger purchases as well. I talked about a car here, but perhaps it's going on holiday. Maybe you can do a holiday that's closer to home, or maybe you can find a cheaper way to go on holiday. Maybe you don't need the latest phone if it's time to upgrade. Maybe you can make do again with something smaller. Or maybe you don't need to upgrade your phone at all yet. Maybe you can wait a little bit longer before you make that decision to upgrade. Again, that's money that you are not spending for the time being, and it's money you can save and put towards, saving or investing or whatever it is you want to do, building wealth essentially. Now, once you've had a look at the bigger items, then you can look at some of the smaller items. Now, a lot of people sometimes get upset about the idea of, if you didn't drink your morning coffee every day, you would save few euros, few pounds, few dollars a day, and that would eventually add up over time. And though I partially agree with this, that's to say I believe the bigger items, like I mentioned before, do make the bigger difference. It's still important to have good financial habits because, it's just a cup of coffee. It's just, one meal out. It's just one drink at the bar, for example. If you don't have discipline when it comes to these things, though it won't be at the same scale as some of the bigger items, you're still losing out on some potential for building wealth. And I'm not saying, deprive yourself of good things, not saying deprive yourself of eating out, deprive yourself of your morning coffee, for example. But the key for me is really being able to justify expenses, not making impulse decisions, and being intentional with what you do with your money. Also, you can take a look at your mobile phone provider, your internet provider. You can have a look at your electricity bill and see if there's a provider that's offering a better deal out there, or even a discount in the short term. And again, this can be something that can help you save money in the long run. And one last point for reducing expenses, a bonus if you like, for the lucky folks watching who are location independent, are freelancers, is that you can give the digital nomad lifestyle a try. Now, digital nomads essentially are able to work from anywhere around the world as long as they have an internet connection and a laptop. And as a result, that can give you the opportunity to perhaps move to a country where the cost of living is not so expensive, whether it's on the short term or the long term. And as a result, that will generally reduce your cost of living, and one can assume that you'll keep the same level of income at the same time as well. So of course, it massively increases your savings rate. There are a lot of countries around the world now that are offering digital nomad visas and trying to attract these kind of professionals to the country. So there are options out there. I'll leave a link in the video description as well with a PDF put together by KPMG talking about some of the digital nomad destinations around the world where digital nomad visas are available. Now that we've talked about reducing your expenses, let's talk about increasing your income. So if you're working for a company, the most obvious way to increase your income is to ask for a pay rise or look for a promotional opportunity, and by doing so, you therefore increase your salary. However, there are other ways to do it as well. For example, you could learn a new skill or get a qualification, such as, for example, if you're working in finance, you could get an accounting qualification, and that recognizes essentially your level of expertise and experience in the field and might put you ahead of other candidates when it comes to promotional opportunities or hiring. Alternatively, you could learn speaking a foreign language, you could learn how to program something, you could learn how to use a particular software that no one else has the expertise to use. And by doing one or more of these things, what you can generally expect is that your value in the labor market should increase, and that means that people will be willing to generally pay you more for the expertise that you have. Now, as good as all of that is, and it does maximize your income, it only maximizes one income stream. And a lot of what people talk about when it comes to building wealth is having multiple income streams. So how can you do that? One of the ways is by having a side hustle or a side project that generates you money. Now, side hustles these days have really taken off because there are just so many ways to make money online. There are so many opportunities for you to generate additional income. For example, you could do part-time tutoring, you could do food delivery, graphic design. The possibilities are endless. And so in doing so, you're increasing your income, but not only that, you're diversifying your income as well. So that if something were to happen to your main job, then you do have a secondary source of income, which is providing a bit of relief in the case of a financial emergency. And the last point I'm going to discuss for increasing your income is to invest in cash flowing assets. Now, a cash flowing asset is when you purchase something. It might be a stock that pays a dividend, or it might be property. And essentially those things pay you out on a regular basis. It increases your cash flow. It's essentially, again, another income stream. Now, I know we're trying to speed up our wealth building journey here, and it might not seem so apparent at first because, those cash flows, depending on how big you invest into, dividend paying stock or a property, it might not be a large amount of money at first, but you have that cash flow coming in, you can reinvest it, you can buy more of these cash flowing assets, and then eventually your cash flow will increase. And at the same time, if you're buying a stock or you're buying a property, that's an asset, so that's wealth that is still conserved in your net worth. It's just not, it's not cash, it's not liquid, it's an illiquid asset. It is nevertheless still building your wealth. It's really further down the line when you'll see the effect of that additional income when you reinvest it and you let it grow, that you'll see how it's contributed to your wealth building journey. When it comes to these investments as well, I do have to say it's not entirely passive. When it comes to real estate, there is effort involved. And when it comes to investing, you do need to have a certain knowledge set. So it's not something you can really easily get into. It's something you do have to assess your risk capacity before you look to invest in these things. So we've talked about reducing our expenses and we've talked about increasing our income. Is one more preferential than the other? I would say the answer is yes, and the reason is as follows. When we look at reducing our expenses, yes, it requires a bit of personal sacrifice, but it doesn't require a lot of effort. And it's very easy if you look through a budget to find places that you can cut back on and save money. However, there's only so far back you can cut your expenses. There will come a point where you need a place to live. You need to eat food to survive. You need, I would even say, to have some enjoyment in your life as well. So you can't cut out everything. When it comes to increasing your income, however, if you look at particularly side hustles, you look at investments, the potential for growth is uncapped. You can take your income as high as you want. You could go from 10,000 euros to 100,000 euros to 1,000,000 euros in the extreme case. But you get the point. And so if we go back to the theory at the start where we're looking to increase our savings rate, yes, reducing our expenses does increase our savings rate, but up to a point. But if we look to increase our income, then the potential for that savings rate to grow, as I say, it's uncapped. That savings rate can grow enormous if we wanted to. So guys, I hope you found this video useful and helpful, and I hope that you're able to take away some of the tips and put them into practice in your lives. Leave a comment and let me know, are you already doing some of these things, or have you put them into practice in the past, and how has it impacted your wealth building journey? Till next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.